Hey soccer fans, welcome back to the Feed the Fire podcast. In today's episode, we want to wish everyone a happy Memorial Day. We hope that you took the time to enjoy the holiday as well as take a moment to remember why we have it. And thank you for all those servicemen and women who gave their lives in the defense of this country. In this episode, we are going to be looking back at the Chicago Fire's 1-1 draw against DC United. We're going to look forward in their upcoming matches, double match week, against Orlando City and the LA Galaxy, as well as talk a little bit about my youth coaching experiences from this weekend. Let's just say there was a lesson in humility. All this and more, so stay tuned. Hey Fire fans and Major League Soccer fans, once again, this is your host Nick with the Feed the Fire podcast. Again, happy Memorial Day. I hope you all got to enjoy yourself. Also remember why we observe this holiday. Hopefully you weren't stuck doing yard work all day like I was, but you know what? It's worth it. The house looks nice. I got the edger finally working again, the right size thread, and a well-edged lawn just has that certain quality to it. And yeah, that's my Midwest dad showing right there for sure. Again, hope everyone had a wonderful Memorial Day weekend. Thank you to all our servicemen and women who made the ultimate sacrifice in defense of this country. Fortunately, no one in my family was killed in action, but both of my grandparents served in the Navy. My daughter's godfather and one of my best friends is currently serving in the Navy, so I thank them for their service, and I pray that all of your family members who have served were honored this weekend as well. Couple quick housekeeping things before we dive into the content of today's episode. But if you hadn't seen it, if you hadn't heard about it through some of the Fire advertising channels, they're throwing a white party fundraiser on June 30th, and it looks like tickets are available to the public. So go check that out on the Chicago Fire's website. They're throwing a white party. I don't know if they didn't want to throw a red party, if that just was not fashion forward enough for them over there. But yeah, I think it was maybe $130, $150 for the ticket. There's supposed to be former and current players there, other Fire executives. But yeah, go check it out if you're into charity and going to Chicago Fire events. The other thing I wanted to point out, as I teased a little earlier, no under 8 coaching this weekend. We had the league had the weekend off for Memorial Day, but it was the Junior Olympics, which is a tournament for all the Greek churches in the Chicago metropolis, the Chicago diocese, going from Twin Cities in Minneapolis down to St. Louis, even in the Quad Cities to Iowa, throughout Illinois, Northwest Indiana. So all the Greek Orthodox churches all converged in Palos Hills at Stagg High School and at St. Constantine and Helen Palos Hills there for a huge Olympics tournament. I'm very proud of my daughter. She is not into sports and team sports. She does her gymnastics, but she entered the checkers tournament and ended up with a silver medal. So very proud. We got a medal in the family. My son, his relay team did not place. They had a good showing, but did not get a medal. And his 7-9 soccer team that I coached definitely learned a lesson in humility at this tournament. It's funny when you get these kind of, these kind of youth tournaments where it's through the churches, not through either a park district or any sort of club or anything like that. You get wildly different levels of experience and skill. And we had 9 players on our age 7-9 team. I think maybe 3 of them had played organized soccer before. And we're going up against, in the first round, a church who had probably 18 kids on their roster, double the amount of kids that we had, and that was just one of their 2 teams. So they had almost 40 kids in the 7-9 age range, and we could barely scrape together enough to have a couple of subs. So it very quickly got out of control. It was 5-0 at halftime, and when it got to 7-0, I looked at the other coach and said, "Hey, it's the Junior Olympics. It's a friendly. Can I just dump my bench and let these kids just play as much as they want?" And he's like, "Yeah, sure, go for it." So thank you to the opposing coach for their sportsmanship. Thank you to the referee who just kind of looked the other way when he saw all my kids run onto the field. So at 7-0, I guess you could consider it a forfeit, and the ultimate result was a 12-1 lesson in life there for my kids. But I give them all credit. They all left the field smiling. They had all had so much fun, like practicing and getting to know the other kids at church over the last few weeks, getting to come be a part of these Junior Olympics, to see kids from all over the greater Chicagoland area and throughout our diocese. It was a cool experience for them, and they're going to remember that more than the loss on the soccer field. And that's what I was happy for them in this setting. And we'll keep plugging away year after year. Maybe this is the spark where a few of these parents see it and say, hey, we need to get our kids more involved. Maybe we should start an athletic program at the church. Maybe we should build out a little something here. So we'll see what leads to it. I will say though, my son took it pretty hard playing in his park rec league with some good players, and usually being at one of the top teams in the league. This was a hard loss for him, and so he definitely learned a lesson in life. And I had a lot of people come up and console him and try to tell him it's about how you perform. And when you're at this level, ages 7, 8, 9, it is all about just how well you perform individually, and not from a skills perspective or results perspective, but are you trying? Are you giving it your all? Are you giving it your best? And I can honestly say I'm proud of the kid. He did play his best despite being down multiple goals quickly, and just kind of let all that emotion out after the game. So it was heartbreaking to see. It's always hard to see your kid cry, but you know that he's going to take these lessons to heart, and hopefully it just makes him want to be a better player, whether it's soccer or another sport. So with that out of the way, let's dive into our topic here, the Chicago Fire, our club. And by the way, thank you to everyone who has written in, whether it's through Spotify responses or through email or Twitter direct messages, who said, they appreciate hearing some of these stories that I'm going through with my son and with some of the kids that I coach, because they're going through it too themselves, and it's a little different experience than just other types of podcasts. And I appreciate you guys letting me know that, and thank you. I really do appreciate it. Anyone can come in here and spit stats and all this other stuff about the league, and I'm glad that you like my style of it. So thank you to everyone who does that. Speaking of that, let's get back into the Spotify polls, that the responses we received from the poll. Lawson Burkhardt says, I love the U8 commentary. Nice breath of fresh air. So there you go. Thank you, Lawson. JJ Pepe 13. Really hope the Fire sign Gary Smith as the head coach. I've been to a couple of Nashville games. They play a very attractive counterattack style that's effective and entertaining to watch. Yeah, he would be a great addition to the Chicago Fire staff. Now, maybe they have someone else in mind. Maybe they're looking to get someone with an even higher profile than Smith. But if this is the worst that the Chicago Fire can do, it would be a huge improvement. And Ryan also says, Frank getting fired to become interim manager would be phenomenal. And yes, that is the joke that is going around Chicago Fire circles right now. How can you fire Frank Klopas because you don't have Frank Klopas to be the interim manager? So Ryan, Pepe, and Lawson, thank you guys for responding to the poll on Spotify. Always great to see the interaction there. And if anyone wants to reach out to me directly, you can find me on Gmail, glasshouseSoccer@gmail.com, or Glasshouse Soccer on social media. Direct messages are open. Now, let's get back, right back into the Fire versus DC here. And I wanted to start talking about this 1-1 draw on the road. The jumping off spot I wanted to use was an article from MLSsoccer.com by Joseph Lowry called, Is Your Team Meeting Expectations? And this is what he wrote about the Chicago Fire. His preseason expectation was that the Fire would be fighting for a wild card spot. And here is his season so far. Despite splashing the cash to sign Hugo Kuipers from Belgium, the Fire can't find him in dangerous areas. They also don't have top-end talent in any line of the field. The problems in Chicago are predictable and plentiful, but hope isn't lost with 9 teams sneaking into the playoffs out east. Joseph Lowry's verdict for the Fire: are they meeting expectations? Yes, they are meeting expectations while dreaming of summer reinforcements. So that's pretty interesting that he thinks the Fire are meeting expectations, considering there are 7 points out of the play-in spot, the wild card spot, the 9th seed. They are 7 points out, and yet he has them meeting expectations. So he really thinks that they're going to make some signings this summer and all of a sudden come on in a flurry and make up 7 points to jump. Montreal, Atlanta, Nashville, and Orlando, and DC or Philadelphia, and get into a wild card spot. So very interesting conclusion by Joseph Lowry in his "Are They Meeting Expectations" article, but I can't argue with what he actually wrote, that they're not getting Kuipers the ball, they don't have top-end talent, there's tons of problems here that we all knew about, but there's still a little bit of hope there considering 2/3 of the teams make the playoffs. So with that being said, the Fire end up going on the road to DC and getting a 1-1 draw. Now, I had to go back and watch this match on replay because we were gone all Saturday for the Junior Olympics, and I hate watching sporting events on replay when you know the score and you know the results, and with the Chicago Fire, kind of know how the game is going to go. But so let me just kind of run down kind of some free flow thoughts that I had and notes I was jotting down as I rewatched the game. Which, by the way, I was watching the game with my 8-year-old son again on replay, and he's like, "Oh my gosh, here we go!" And I'm like, "Dude, they're not going to score. We already know the score is 1-1. Like, this isn't going to be a goal right here. Like, we can get all excited about it." But he was like really thinking they were going to score in certain moments, or maybe they're going to come back and get the win. And I was like, "No, Teddy, no, buddy. We know it's a draw." Anyway, here are some of the thoughts I had. Overall, it was a pretty unentertaining match. At least for long stretches. And again, it seemed appropriate to watch it as a replay on a rainy Sunday afternoon. But the Fire did show some good moments. They grinded out that point on the road, and maybe this is all they needed to get that monkey off their back and say, look, we can play good soccer. We can create opportunities and score and get points even on the road. Maybe they turn this into a point streak with a much beleaguered Orlando City coming in midweek. The lineup that they used, there was a change to the lineup in the formation, I should say. They used a diamond in the midfield, and Kellen Acosta said in his post-game they played more like a 3-5-2, but they were trying this in training, trying to do something new, something to kind of jumpstart themselves, and credit to the team for doing that. But also they really wanted to do that to kind of muck up the predicted 3-4-3 that DC United was going to play to prevent those midfielders from playing long balls over the top to Benteke. And for a lot of the time it worked. But for the times when they were getting those long balls over, you saw the Chicago Fire defenders trying to almost bracket Benteke, have someone above him, someone below him, or sandwich him so that they couldn't do it. A lot of what we see opposing teams do to Hugo Kuipers when they know Shaqiri or anyone else is just going to be bombing balls over the top. So it was a good defensive kind of tactical twist from the Chicago Fire on this one, and again, it was probably a better matchup on the road. Speaking of lineups, though, it was interesting that Barlow gets the start at the top, and I know he was cheap. Like, what did we pay for him? $250,000. He's just not doing anything for us. Like, even as a guy who's just going to run and try and press the other team into some turnovers, well, even when he gets those turnovers, he's not even putting the shots on frame. So Barlow looked especially terrible to me in this game and in the few appearances that he's had. On the flip side, Andrew Goodman may have had his best attacking game of the season. I think the only way he could have had a better attacking game is if he actually would have scored. He started taking shots. All of the Chicago Fire's best opportunities came from Goodman's side of the field when he was involved in the play, and you heard the broadcasters say that several times. And if he had just a little bit better shooting night, he probably would have had 2 goals. So this was a really good game for Goodman, and it shows what the offense possibly could be when everyone is on the same page and gelling together, playing well together, and getting that wing play going that we thought the Chicago Fire team would have had over the last 2-3 seasons. Also, to keep it on the positive side, I know, me talking positive about the Chicago Fire, wild here, right? Carlos Terán had a pretty good game. If he can keep his temper and his fits for the full 90 minutes, he might be one of the best center backs in MLS. He's got the size, both in height and in width. The guy is strong. He's muscular. He's improved his passing a little bit over the last couple seasons. His positioning is pretty good. His timing on his tackles is pretty good. But when he loses his temper and starts to lash out and starts to make rash challenges, or when he has those mental lapses, into the 75th, 85th minute in games, then starts giving up free kicks, picking up yellows and reds, that becomes a problem for him. And you saw he was very emotional during this game. A lot of fist throwing and come on, no, and just stomping off. And I think he ended up with a yellow card at some point in this match. But you know, when he's matched up with Benteke, when it was his job to make sure one of the top scorers in MLS does not score against you, you're going to get emotional, you're going to get passionate, you're going to have those fits. But as long as he can get that under control, and as long as he can play with, maybe that's not the right way to put it, as long as he can focus on the positives of his game, he could be a top center back in MLS and get that move to Europe should he want it. He's got the physical attributes, he's developing the talent. Let's just get him the mental part of the game, and that could be the final piece for him. I am going to point out, because I've been saying it a lot, you saw his play peak when he was alongside an experienced and positive Rafa Chihos, and when you had a great defensive coach in CJ Brown working with him on a daily basis. Now you see Chihos digress, you see CJ Brown move into an office position instead of a coaching position, and you see Carlos Terán's mental game lapse. Also, the Fire played a lot better to start the second half. It all tailed off about the 75th minute, however, which was disappointing. I'm glad to see them not have that whole here we go again mentality that you heard the players talk about post-game last batch. Oh, we give up a goal, here we go again. Fabian Herbers said it. Maybe that's why he didn't have the armband. Though Klopas will say he gave it to Acosta for a confidence boost. But maybe that's why. When you make comments like, well, here we go again, maybe you lose the armband, the captain's band. But they were able to come out in the second half, play a lot better, and the only thing that I thought kind of hampered them from maybe going for those 3 points is when you saw Herbers and Dean come in around that 75th minute, they didn't increase the intensity. Those were not game-changing subs. Those were subs that came in and maintained. Now, I'm not saying they were coached to do that. I'm just saying that's kind of how they fit. Maybe not so much Jonathan Dean because he's not that attacking defensive back. He's a defend first back. He's there to do a job. But you would want Fabian Herbers to be more intense and push the ball forward and look for the game winner. Rather than just kind of have things fall into a lazy rhythm. Still need more service to Kuipers, but I did like that Gutierrez was more active as a center midfielder. I kind of liked how Klopas used like-for-like subs instead of going defensive and settling for a point on the road. The Fire did have the momentum that second half, especially after Acosta's goal. So using the like-for-like subs, I guess his thought process, and it's not a terrible thought process, was we can keep the momentum going, but it just didn't happen. The subs didn't play that way. Speaking of the coaching, though, Paulo Nagamura gets a red card, straight red. I don't know what he said to the fourth official or to the assistant referee that garnered a straight red card, but that's what it was. And you know what? I'm not sure I like it. Yes, in some instances, you do want your coaches to get fired up and to kind of maybe motivate your team by getting that yellow card. You see it in the NBA. Coach picks up a technical and it fires up the team. Maybe you see it in the NFL when the coach is out in midfield arguing with the umpires there and the officials and getting a 15-yard penalty or something like that, firing it up. But for your assistant coach to get a straight red, I don't think that's fired up, let's motivate the team. I think he just lost his cool, said some magic words, and then got tossed. Not a good look. Definitely not a good look, and again, we can see why he was not considered for any other head coaching jobs before joining the Fire staff. The last observation, I don't even know if I want to point it out, but I will. It's the typical, hey, look at that, Xherdan Shaqiri is not on the team, and the Fire end up playing better and getting a result. Look at that. Let's move into Klopas' post-game comments. The last couple of episodes I've been giving some kind of live reactions and playing the audio with it. I don't want to do that this episode because we've got a lot to get into, a couple teams to preview in the second half of the show, but I will highlight some of the things that he said. Overall, he said generally this is a good step, and it's going to take steps when you are in this kind of bottom of the barrel, if you will. If you're at the bottom of the table, right, you're going to have to come up with steps. You can't all of a sudden go from playing a couple terrible games, 7 or 8 winless games, and then all of a sudden flip it and have, like a 3-0 victory in DC. Not going to happen. And at least it's not going to be sustainable if it does. So Klopas talked about this is a good first step. We've got to take a few more steps before we get to where we want to be. He was asked about Shaqiri being out on national team duty, and he said, the team has to be focused on one thing. It sounded like he didn't want them focused on Xherdan Shaqiri. They didn't talk too much about Shaqiri's situation. I think he even hinted, or maybe even said, they didn't talk about how this might be Shaqiri's last game with the Fire, after the last game. He just wanted them focused on the DC match, which is good. That's what they need. And he did say, we wish Shaqiri the best, and it's best for him to focus on the Euro. So I think I don't know if Frank is getting anything from the front office, or if he's just saying, look, I've heard the rumors that it could be Shaqiri's farewell, but we got to focus on our next match. So that's the right mentality to have there. Speaking of mentality, he talked about that fight, that never gonna give up mentality, that come out with passion, come out and play with honor. Remember the tradition of the guys before you when you put on that Fire jersey. So he liked that from his team in this match. He said he gave Acosta the armband. He gave him the captain's armband. He's a World Cup veteran, and he maybe needed it for his confidence. Now, I don't like the fact that you give the captain's armband to a guy who needs a confidence boost. I don't think that's how you should use the captain's armband. And maybe now that is indicative of why he gave it to Shaqiri so many times beforehand. Klopas also recognized that Fabian Herbers was part of the leadership group, and it's just that Herbers was coming off the bench, so he gave it to Acosta. I am happy to hear that Acosta is part of the leadership group in the Chicago Fire team. I think that was as much a part of his signing as it was his on-the-field performance. What he can do in the locker room, what he can do on the training pitch, and what he can do as kind of that, coach on the field, lead by example kind of guy. As long as he's not getting red carded and tossed, we're good. Happy to hear that. Klopas also complimented Thuram versus Benteke and how Thuram frustrated him. Klopas even said, and this is bold because he's criticizing the referees in a post-game conference. I don't know if we're going to hear about a fine getting released against him, but he even said, Benteke should have been sent off. He should have had a second yellow card. And I think most fans, and I think most objective observers of the game would agree that Benteke did enough to earn a second yellow card. Klopas even said he heard the fourth official call into the head ref, hey, he's already on a yellow. So it did seem like maybe there was a little bit of hesitancy to pull a red card. And you know what? Maybe he did it for the Fire too. So maybe he's just kind of averaging things out there and, not wanting the game to be decided on a refereeing decision. You can criticize the ref, and I think fairly so in this match, but I'd have to agree with Frank on this one. It looked like Benteke could have been sent off and not have had too many complaints about it after the fact. The last thing he talked about was set pieces, and he said, it's different. They train it, they work on it in training, but it's different when they get to the game time. Well, yeah, no duh, right? The best laid plans of mice and men often go awry. And to use, I don't like comparing sports to war and battle and all that, especially on Memorial Day weekend when we have the holiday for a reason. But people say like the plan works until bullets start flying, right? And in this case, that's what it sounds like. The set piece is going with the Chicago Fire. That we train it, we practice it, but when we get out and play it in the game, things happen in the game. He also said it wasn't a good matchup due to DC's height. But still, I don't think that's a good excuse. I still would want to see balls put into kind of a dangerous area instead of floated to the far post and headed back that they do so often, or just kind of line drived into the near post for a flick on. I mean, you're not giving you have even less margin for error when those are the plans than just put it in the mixer and maybe we'll get lucky on it. So I disagree with how he's assessing his set piece coach as well as the set piece performances. And we're going to talk about that in our opponent previews coming up in the second half of the show. But that's what I got for the DC recap there. All in all, a decent result. A point on the road is fine, but DC is a team that the Fire need to start leapfrogging. Hopefully they can beat them when they come at home in the second half of the season, and hopefully stay ahead of them in the points and in the standings. Benteke did not score. That's a small victory for the Chicago Fire defense, even though the goal they gave up was pretty bad. Set piece. The guy just keeps his run alive, and the defense loses him, and he's able to knock in a loose ball. So that was tough. But you know what? The Chicago Fire's goal on the flip side, that's the play you want to see. It comes up the wing, gets crossed to the middle. Kuipers and Acosta work a nice little 1-2. Acosta I thought he was going to kind of fumble over it a little bit there. He like trip over the ball, but he ended up getting his feet underneath him and finding the corner for the equalizer, and a great goal for him at that. So that's what I wanted to talk about with the DC match. Again, let me know what you think, things that you've seen, things that you want to see going forward. GlassHouseSoccer@gmail.com or on social media at GlassHouseSoccer. And with that, we're going to dive into our halftime break here. I want to recognize our sponsor, Skira Icelandic Spring Water. And if any of you out there are looking to get into the Chicago soccer market with a sponsorship, we are looking to grow our social media presence on Instagram as well as on Facebook and other social media platforms. And we would love for a sponsor to come in and help us with some of the resources needed to do that. So please reach out to me and we can set that up. But we are so very happy to continue to have the support of Skira Icelandic Spring Water here on the podcast. Icelandic for clear, Skira water comes from a spring in a government-protected nature preserve in Iceland with naturally low mineral content. This isn't your average water. Clearly, pun intended, it's one of the best, and I will vouch for that. It is one of the best, especially on these hot summer Chicago days when you're walking around the lakefront, when you're walking around the city. Pop into your local 7-Eleven, grab a bottle or three and have it around with you. Definitely needed for tailgates when the Malort is flowing for sure. And as we do halftime of every show, I want to welcome in our featured guest, John Donovan, with all his takes on the Chicago Fire's match against DC United. John, take it away.
Nick, John Donovan here talking about the Chicago Fire and the MLS. Nick, we had a game Saturday night. It ended up 1-1. It wasn't as boring as it might sound. There was a lot of chances in this game. I think, in my overall opinion of this game, I think the Fire probably had the better part of the game. They certainly had some outstanding chances at the game, and they just couldn't put one away. I mean, Gutman had some beautiful chances. Acosta scored a very nice goal, but he had another one that was just set up in the 20th minute that he couldn't put away. I mean, it was a different team this Saturday evening. I said I wasn't going to be negative, and I'm trying to be positive. So Klopas made some formation changes before the game. He's been always trying to go three in the back, and he had sort of a formation of three in the back, which was Pineda, Terran, and Sijos on the left side. And then he had a whole bunch of midfielders in the middle. It really was kind of, I got into the game a little bit late, so it was a bit confusing who indeed was playing and who was playing midfield. But the one thing that bothered me, I said I wasn't going to be bothered, but is he played Gutierrez on the outside of that midfield position. So you had sort of a sweep of midfielders. No one really playing that center midfield position until towards the end of the game. Gutierrez finally moved into the middle. They took out some players and put some in and redid the formation. But Gutierrez, if you'll go back and look at that game, I talk quite a bit about the importance of a center midfielder. And if you'll look late into the game, in fact, the 94th minute of the game, Gutierrez, who still had a lot of power in himself, broke free and did exactly what center mids are supposed to do. He brought the ball forward. He forced the DC defenders to leave their man to mark Gutierrez, and he shifted it off. Unfortunately, Gutman wasn't able to put that one away, or it wasn't Gutman, it was another player, but was not able to bury it. But the move of Gutierrez and the way the defense responded was exactly what center midfielders should do. We've been playing with Shaqiri in that position, and he doesn't force the defense to make that decision, which always confounded me. I thought, I've talked a bit about having Navarro and Tehran on the same field. I heard the interview by Klopas after the game, and he thought that Navarro played exceptionally well, and I just cannot go with Navarro. He got another yellow card. He's always on the edge of a card, in fact, a red card. I would be, as a coach, very careful about having Navarro and Tehran on the same field at the same time. Both guys have issues with cards. Tehran, early on in the game, I thought, oh my Lord, they're going to stick him off the field before it even starts. But, he had a pretty good game the other day. He had a big guy to deal with, Benteke, and I think he got Benteke a little bit off his game. Tehran is an unusual athlete, big, fast, and most of the times good, but some of his challenges are always of suspect. I'm sure that many referees have been forced into some uncomfortable positions with Tehran's tackling. So the game went on. I thought that the player that probably played the best for the Chicago Fire in this game was Acosta. I mean, he had a early chance at the 20th minute that he didn't bury, but he did bury one. I think it was the 54th minute. He had a lot of screens in front of him and just buried it to the right side of the goal. I'm sorry, the left side of the goal as you're looking at it. And it was a nice play. What confused me later on in the game, I mean, Acosta is a professional. He's a World Cupper. He took him out at the 64th minute. It didn't make any sense to me. I mean, you got your team going 1-1, and the guy that was playing the best on the field, you take out. And I don't know who went in for him, but it was a very odd replacement. I think it was Herbers that went in for him. It didn't make a lot of sense to me. It still doesn't. I think you got to go with the guy that's hot, and Acosta was hot the other night. Again, I would love to see Klopas move up Pineda and put Olmsberg in the middle. I think that would be a much more positive play, and you wouldn't lose any skill level, I don't believe. Tehran is an unusual athlete, but I think Olmsberg with his smartness would cover that. And I think it would be a clear flowing team. The one complaint that I would have, and it's a consistent thing with the Fire, is there's not a lot of movement up front that creates that breaking pass. When you play one guy up front the way we normally play, Kuipers, it makes it difficult. But when you have two guys like you had Barlow and Kuipers up front, I'm sorry I didn't mention that, you have a lot of cuts and a lot of angle passes that should be possible. But, we would see in last night's game is Tehran holding the ball up top, just waiting for somebody to cut or to become available. You don't see that. The DC team, I thought, was pretty well coached. I mean, they seem to really break out of their end very coordinatedly, very well, where the Fire don't seem to be able to move out of their end well. It's normally a long pass but not that methodical passing that you'll normally see. On the goal that Acosta scored, they moved out beautifully, and Gutman had just a marvelous cross into Acosta. He went deep and brought it back to Acosta, more towards the top of the area, and he scored. So a really nice breakout that the Fire don't normally do, where DC was breaking out constantly and making it look good. So a good match. They got a point. They're still way down there. I think they have 11 points, and you look up at Columbus and Cincinnati, and they're up at 26 or 24 points. So the Fire have a long way to go. If history repeats itself, Klopas will win a few games. It might be just before the FIFA break, the 2-week break, but and then they'll go on a slump again, which I hope does not happen. I know that I've been listening to other podcasts, and a lot of people are talking about Klopas and where he probably shouldn't have taken the job as the head coach. It's ruining his reputation with the league and so forth. But he took the job, and he must have felt that he could do something, especially with all these new players. But it hasn't worked out so far, folks. So we'll have to see. We got a game Wednesday. I'm looking forward to the game. We'll just have to see how we do. Thanks a lot, Nick. Mike, have a good night. Bye, guys.
John, thanks as always for your contributions to the show. We appreciate you checking in every week with us, and we look forward to your continued work here with Feed the Fire. Now, let's take a look ahead at the Chicago Fire's double match week. 2 games coming up. Orlando City on Wednesday, May 29th, and then on Saturday, June 1st, against the LA Galaxy. Now, coming off of a draw on the road, getting maybe a little bit of confidence back. Not a lot of turnaround time. Maybe that's what they need. Just automatic. Let's go. Keep firing. This could be a big turning point in the season for the Fire here. If they can get that win against Orlando City and then maybe another draw against the Galaxy, this could be a point where they start to build a little momentum before going into some of the summer breaks here. In his post-game comments, Frank Klopas said there is enough time to recover between the DC game and the Orlando City game for players, and he doesn't expect to rotate the squad much against Orlando. He did hedge a little bit and say, well, we've still got a couple days of training. We'll evaluate everyone. We'll talk to the players. We'll see how they feel. But he does not think he's going to have to rotate the squad because it's a midweek game. And to me, that signals like he's thinking, look, the Orlando is not the good team everyone thought they would be at the beginning of the season. We can take points from them midweek. They're gonna be reeling as well. So and that's the approach you got to take. You got to find the points and get the points where you can take them. I would not look at that LA Galaxy game as a game where you're guaranteed to win. Much better odds beating Orlando City on a Wednesday night, especially because Orlando City has a lot of similarities to the Fire in their season. They're not meeting expectations, despite what Joseph Lowry might say. They're struggling greatly on offense. Their star striker is not getting the service and the goals that we would expect of him. And honestly, Orlando has some of the lowest goals scored, lowest goal totals, as well as some of the lowest shot on target percentage in the league. So not unlike the Chicago Fire here. But Orlando City also has the lowest aerial duels percentage in the league and one of the lowest save percentages in the league for their keepers. To me, that's just like Hugo Kuiper's breakout game incoming. Like, let's get him up in the air challenging some of these Orlando City defenders. Let's get him starting to just get him as much as you can. Not the Shaqiri lob ball stuff, but now that we've seen Gutman develop a little bit, and Marin Haile Selassie is back from injury, if you just tell him, you are not a shoot-first winger, we need you to pass the ball to Kuipers, maybe he'll get some better opportunities then. And then with Chris Mueller coming off the bench, hopefully that keeps him fresh. He just hasn't been that same player since his injury. If he can come off the bench and give you 25, 30 really good minutes, for Selassie or for whoever the other outside midfielder might be, maybe that's the formula for getting Kuiper some better service and getting a few goals against this Orlando team. One statistic that does kind of make me nervous as a Chicago Fire fan, though, is that Orlando has taken the most corner kicks in MLS. They're tied with LAFC and Seattle on 91 corner kicks this season, and the way the Chicago Fire's set-piece defending has been this season, that makes me nervous that Orlando's going to get one off of a corner kick. I didn't go look up the advanced numbers to see how many they've actually converted. MLS's website doesn't have that. I'd have to go probably to FBref or another site. But MLS's website does say that, yep, they're tied for the most corner kicks taken in the league. So that is a statistic to look out for. Let's take a look at the standings here and see where Orlando is in the standings. Right now, they're currently 10th place on 16 points. They have played 14 games, 4 wins, 6 losses, 4 draws. A At -7 goal differential, only 15 goals scored, 22 allowed. But it's interesting, on the road they've got 3 wins, but at home only 1. So they've just kind of had a mess of a season. Definitely not the top of the East, playing for a trophy that most people, including myself, thought that Orlando City would be. If we look at their last game, a 2-0 defeat to Columbus, they lined up in a 3-5-2, and here's their lineup. They've got Pedro Gallese in goal, one of the better goalkeepers in MLS. Along the back line, Schlegel, Cartagena, and Bricalo. Again, these guys are experienced MLS players. Your stacked midfield here, Facundo Torres, the ever-dangerous Facundo Torres. He lit up Chicago in Chicago last season. I was at that game. He just could not be stopped. He was just running around, through, over, in between every Chicago Fire defender that got in his way. And I would expect him to have a little confidence coming back to the Windy City here. Next to him was Nico Lodeiro, the former Seattle Sounders great, who is now starting to find a rhythm with Orlando, and that could be a real dangerous combination, Torres and Lodeiro. You would then have Cesar Araujo, who's playing centrally, Ivan Angulo, and Dagger Thorhalsson out on the right. Someone who hasn't exactly found his rhythm yet, but still in MLS against the Chicago Fire, who has trouble in transition defense, could be a dangerous player. Up top, they've got Luis Muriel and Jack Lynn. We all know that Duncan McGuire could come in and be the starter there should he be available for them. He's still in talks with Blackburn over in the championship in England. He was not available for Orlando in this last match, so maybe something is happening. Maybe he's got an injury. We'll have to check the injury report out later. Coming off the bench, Felipe Martins, Mason Stadohar, Mason there. Robin Janssen, who is an excellent defender. Kyle Smith, Alexander Freeman, Rafael Santos, Martin Ojeda, Ramiro Enrique, and Giorgio Krzyzewski. So Orlando is an experienced team, coached by by Oscar Pareja. Diego Torres was their match day manager. Again, I'm still not sure who match day manager, what that exactly means. But Oscar Pareja, again, an excellent MLS coach, a solid MLS team as far as talent goes, have just been underperforming, as we have seen with the Chicago Fire. So I think the Fire can't. If the Fire score 2 goals, I think they walk away with no worse than a point in this match. I don't see them giving up 3 goals against an anemic offensive team like Orlando City, as we have seen, especially coming off a good defensive performance and a little bit of confidence. Now, it's going to be one of those late game things. Maybe we see Tobias Salquist. Maybe we see little Wyatt Omsberg here, depending on how exhausted that back line looks. But, the attackers should always have a little bit left in the tank and should get the job done. I like the Fire in this one. Again, am I becoming a positive Chicago Fire player here? Or am I just so delirious after this extended winless streak? What are we at? 9 games? 8 games? Winless streak here? That I'm just, pulling whatever predictions out of my hat. I got to be right at some point here. But no, I think the Fire get it done 2-1 in this match. And let's get Kuipers with at least 1 on this one. Looking then ahead to Saturday against the Galaxy. Not too many stats that I wanted to get into because the Galaxy aren't jumping off the stats page against anyone here. They are tied for 3rd with the most goals scored this season in the league, 27 goals. And their expected goals is right at 27. So they are a very efficient team when it comes to converting their chances. But with LA, it's all about their stars. It's all about how well those guys can play. And in their last game, a 2-1 victory at home against Houston, it was Ricky Puig, Gabriel Peck with the goals, and it was the rest of the team having an outstanding performance, the stars being the stars. So let's talk about LA's lineup here. They started in that Houston game, John McCarthy in goal, Julian Aud, Martin Caceres, Maya Yoshida, as well as Miki Yamane along the back there. Yamane I'm not too familiar with, but Yoshida, an extremely capable, competent center back, one who can even push forward into the attack, likes to choose his timing for that. So if you see Yoshida moving forward, you know that he has recognized either a mismatch or an odd number situation that the Galaxy can take advantage of. The midfield of Ricky Puig, Gaston Brugman, and Marky Delgado, that, again, a very fast counterattacking type of midfield there. Their front three, Diego Fagundes, Dejan Joveljic, and Gabriel Peck. And off the bench, they're able to call on Miguel Berry, John Nelson, Edwin Cerrillo, Jalen Neal, Daniel Aguirre, I mispronounced that, Aguirre, Jonathan Perez, Novak Mikovic, Mauricio Cuevas, and Emiro Garces, coached by none other than Greg Vanney and matchday managers Dan Kalikman, Jason Benton, Nick Thesloff. But yeah, Greg Vanney, one of the better MLS coaches out there, has had his struggles since coming to the Galaxy, but seemingly righting the ship a little bit with the Galaxy. So it's the three G's though that you got to watch out for: Gabriel Peck, Gaston Brugman, and where's the other one? Why can't I find out? I thought it was the three G's, but anyway, Brugman, Peck, Puig. There you go. Those are the guys to watch out for. Maybe it was the three P's and not the three G's. Why am I blinking here? Anyway. When the play starts, you'll know who to look for. But that's how the Galaxy have played. They like that 4-3-3. Vanney likes that 4-3-3. They can kind of defend in the middle as they need to, and then launch a quick counterattack with numbers. And like I said, if you see Yoshida moving forward, if you see Brugman moving forward, getting into advanced areas, then you know that the Galaxy are trying to take advantage of something they see. Now the Galaxy, Western Conference team, having a very good season so far, at least according to the standings. They are sitting in third place on 25 points after 15 games played, 6 wins, 2 losses, and 7 ties. They have 27 goals scored, 22 against. Home record, have not lost at home. Excellent way to be in the playoff picture. 3 wins and 3 draws at home, but on the road, 3 wins, 2 losses, 4 draws. It would not surprise me if the Galaxy want to try and rest a few players, especially coming into Chicago against a poor Chicago team. It is opposite conference here, so if they lose to the Fire or if they draw to the Fire, it's not like they're giving up any ground to any conference opponents here. Though things are really tight out in the Western Conference. Salt Lake is ahead on 29 points, but second place Minnesota all the way down to 6th place Vancouver, that's a 3-point gap, 25 to 22 points. So it is tight atop the Western Conference standings there. So the Galaxy might not want to concede it. And I can see Vanney going either way. I can see him trying to go all out and take 3 points on the road against Chicago and really give themselves that little jump up over Minnesota and put a little distance between LAFC and Austin. Or I can see him being very pragmatic and resting his players and settling for a road point. And if he goes to settle for a road point, I would love to see him then get taken advantage of and have the Fire hit him on a counterattack and Kuipers with the game winner, getting back on the board. So that's kind of how I expect things to play out. I think it ends up being a 2-2 draw at home in Chicago. I mean, it's not an easy trip to go from the West Coast to Chicago. Jet lag, time difference, all that good stuff. But I think the Fire do get the result against Orlando. They build a little bit of momentum, and they start scoring at home against that Galaxy game. I plan on being there. If you guys are going to be there, look for me. I'll be with some of my cousins. We'll be having a few beers at the tailgate. We'll be up in Section 205 cheering on the men in red. So if you're there, shoot me a message. Let's have a drink together. Let's shake hands. Let's say hi. Talk a little Fire. Talk a little life if you want to. Talk about whatever you want to. I'm open to anything. That's kind of my looking forward match previews. Also, go out and find the show News Across the Galaxy, NAGS, N-A-G-S, News Across the Galaxy. I got a friend of mine, Edgar, who is one of the hosts on that show. He's put together a great network of independent Major League Soccer content creators, and he's asked me to appear on their Galaxy Fire pregame show that should be out Thursday, Friday, maybe Saturday morning. So go find News Across the Galaxy. They're on YouTube. They're a podcast as well. Give them a subscription and take a listen at their next upcoming episode for the Chicago Fire. you'll hear my voice. It'll be a lot of fun. We had some good times with them last year as well. All right, let's take a quick look at some of the league headlines, and then we'll wrap for the evening. Some of the rumors that are out there, I wanted to address one because it just pains me to have to see him possibly leave Major League Soccer. It's rumored that Yorgos Giakoumakis is being courted by Chivas Guadalajara down in Liga MX. And it's rumored, the rumor that I saw was that it was a $25 million deal. It was either 10 or 15 for the transfer fee and another 10 or 15 in salary. I want to say it was like a 10 million transfer fee and a $15 million salary. So that would be really hard for Atlanta to turn down. Getting $10 million for Giakoumakis. I forget exactly what they paid for him to come in, but they're not getting the production out of him as they were last season, and he looks very frustrated. You saw it in the games against Chicago when he's not scoring. When he's not scoring, it's everyone else's problem as well, and it's starting to be a little bit annoying, I think. I'm kind of annoyed watching it. I can only imagine how his teammates are when he's not getting the perfect service, that he's getting very emotional on the pitch, and you can tell by his body language. Now, if they know him and that's how he plays, and they understand that he's just emotional and he's striving to be the best, and he wants goals, and we got to play better balls to him, fine, great, good, wonderful. But you can see the body language there is really starting to be noticeable with Giakoumakis. So we'll see. Maybe it's an offer they can't say no to. You can't pass up $10 million in a transfer fee for a guy who might not be worth that come the end of the season. But I'd hate to see him go. I'm glad I got to see him play while he was here. But we'll kind of keep tabs on that development. Some of the other signings from around the league. John Token signs a new deal with the New York Red Bulls. It is through 2027 with an option for 2028. He was only 21 years old. So that's great that they've got him for another 3 years of control, and that they could probably get some good sell-on or some good transfer fees for him if he does continue to play and they look to move him. The Union have signed goalkeeper Andre Blake to a contract extension. Charlotte FC signed Andrew Prevet to a new contract. Austin FC exercised their buyout on struggling star Emiliano Rigoni. FC Cincinnati signed homegrown forward Stefan Schirilla. And Charlotte FC also have transferred Enzo Capetti, the beleaguered DP there, to Rosario Central in Argentina. So he is heading back to Argentina. I, for one, will not miss him, especially as a Fire fan. And if you want to continue looking at some more of these headlines, just go look for the transfer tracker on MLSsoccer.com. See if there's anything else on my notes here that I want to tell you. No. That is everything for this week, everyone. I appreciate y'all taking the time to listen to my thoughts on the Chicago Fire on Major League Soccer. I thank you for your continued support, for Skira, for John Donovan, for Ryan, for Tom, for JJ, for everyone who's written in. Israel, hope to see you at the match upcoming, you and your son. Ava, if by some reason you're listening, looking forward to seeing you at the match again. Looking forward to everyone out at the tailgates, supporters group fun. And please continue to share the show, share the link. Help me grow the show as best as you all can. Hopefully we can get some more sponsorships, get some marketing opportunities, and really kind of push this thing into the forefront. But you know what the best marketing is? The best marketing is a winning Chicago Fire team. And let's focus on that over the next week. Let's look for 6 points. I'd be happy with 4. I'd probably settle for 2. But you know what? Let's go Fire.